5th or March 15th.
Yeah.
Yep, that was even me. I mean, and I'm probably more technically literate than some people.
Well, hey, you have a headset on, so obviously.
Well, that's because my speaker quit. So, or
Oh,
my other speaker. So I'm using these just because that's what I can hear with today.
got it.
Okay, so I don't know if this is everybody. I thought we were going to have 9 people in our group, but we've become a little bit more intimate than that. Anyways, that's great. Hello and welcome everybody. Some of you were in our last session. I want to thank you for joining this session today, for your willingness to participate in this discussion. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this topic. So I have typed in, our topic is guarding against early returns, and I have typed in our question in the chat room. First, we're going to assign roles, and then we will do a quick introduction. Then we will go to each person for their ideas, have a brief discussion, and summarize. We don't need a timekeeper, I think, for this small group. But I do need a recorder, and I'm wondering who would be willing to take that task on for me. Thank you, Marie. Thank you very much. And if you can just please record people's responses to the question in the chat room and then do a summary at the end, that would be great. I don't see, so not everybody has put their district number beside their name. So if you go and click up on those 3 little dots and do that, please, that would be great.
Hey, Chris, is Chris here? I want to ask a question. Hey,
I
Chris.
am here.
No offense, but I really wanted to get into the helicopter parents one.
Okay.
And whatever that room number is, it just sticks. Am I doing something wrong? It also happened before when I was trying to get to this one.
Okay. What I will do is send Martin a text saying that someone can't get in there and to see if he can get in and.
It's saying that waiting for host to start the meeting. Yes, that's what I see.
Okay.
Rick, I had a similar problem with the first session, and
I did too.
Be patient. You just have to be patient because the little wheel is spinning, and it's just waiting to get you in there. And I panicked and went out and back in again, and went out and went back in again.
Okay.
And boom, it took me 15 minutes to get into the session that I was.
It just says it isn't even started yet. So, all right.
No, it's probably started.
Yeah. I'll go back and do that.
Those are the things that we'll work on and figure out for the next time, because I'm sure the answer is easy, but I did exactly the same thing. And I had the additional panic of it said, you know, if you're the host, this is what you need to do. And those things didn't work either. So, but we got there.
Okay. I'll let the wheel spin.
So Chris, I see that somebody's in the waiting room. Oh, hang on.
Yes, I will be admitting those as they come in.
Okay. All right, great. So let's get started with some introductions. I've met some of you in the last session, but lots of you are new. So if you could please just say the name that you would like to be called. And again, say 1 word about yourself or your last week. And Dan, we'll start with you, please.
Okay, Dan Converse, District 5110, which is Oregon. My word for this week was harvesting.
And Chris?
Good morning. My name is Chris Miller, District 5170, Youth Service Chair, San Francisco Bay Area. And my word for this week, stressful.
Yeah. I think we can relate to that. Marie?
I'm Marie Johnson. I'm from District 5100, and inspired would be my word.
That's a good one. Case, Chesa?
So, Chesapeake, I'm from District 5190, which is California, Nevada. And were we supposed to have a word? I didn't get the homework notes.
Just one word explaining or telling us about your last week. So
Last week, well, busy. That's all. Boring, but busy.
Marilyn?
Okay, I'm Marilyn Edlin from District 5030, which is King County in Seattle area, so Washington State. And my word for the week, I guess, would be family.
It's a good one. And DJ?
DJ Brown, District 5470, Southern Colorado, and my word is challenged for the week.
I can relate to that. Mary Lynn?
Yes, my name is Mary Lynn Kagan. I'm chair for District 5180 RYE, and my word for the week is virtual.
That
It's a
too.
good one. Daryl?
I am Daryl Bishop from District 5080 in British Columbia, Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho. Anyways, my word for the week is amazed. Weather, technology, lots of things.
That's great.
It's good
Gina?
weather.
Sorry?
The weather is good.
The weather is good. We're grateful. And Gina?
She just put a note that said that she can't actually
Oh,
do
okay.
video or because she's at work. Good for her.
wow.
Multitasking, way to
Multitask.
go.
Yeah.
Hi, Gina.
Somebody needs to
and
pay my
Rosa.
Social Security, right?
So welcome everybody. My name is Pat Carson, and I am the chair of District 5080 Youth Exchange Committee. And one word to describe my last week is productive. So thank you for that, and it's nice to meet you all. So as leaders in the Youth Exchange program or youth services, we want the exchange experience to be a positive one for everybody involved, for our students, our host families, our host schools, and our clubs. Every year, Rotary has students who return home early, unfortunately, and that is a very difficult experience for everybody involved. So the question I have for you today is, how do you avoid the yellow card, red card, and an early return? And I'm wondering, is everybody familiar with the yellow card system? No, yes. Does anybody want to elaborate on what that is? Daryl.
Sure. It's a behavior management system that is used with kids to initially give them a warning that their behavior is putting them on very thin ice, and that's the yellow card. And so they're monitored usually through the rest of their exchange experience to make sure that they're doing what they need to. And then a red card would usually be a repeat of the same offense. Part of the difficulty, and I'll mention this in a little bit, one of the difficulties is that some kids think that each behavior has its own track. You know, I got a yellow card for drinking, but I didn't get a yellow card for driving. So that shouldn't be a red card. That should be a new yellow card. You know, it's not very logical, but you know, that has come up. So yellow cards are yellow cards, and it doesn't make any difference how you get one. But when you get a red card, you get a call to the parents from the district to arrange the flight home post haste. That's
right. So it's just like in soccer, just like the rules of soccer. So I don't know if you need to take a minute to kind of think about the question and your response to that, or if you just want to start working around the room and everybody can share your thoughts. share your experiences. Marie?
So one of the things that I noticed last year, I think this is both something for our inbounds and our outbounds, is especially with our inbounds, we need to remember that they don't understand our language or our ways of doing things. We had a very challenging Italian student who just didn't seem to grasp the rules. So what wound up happening is our human nature is to automatically be, he's a bad kid. And I think they sense that. And I think one of the approaches that I think we need to start taking is, perhaps he needs to be educated on what our expectations are. Just telling them our expectations is not necessarily getting through. I think we need to explain them better and create a bit tighter bond with these students. I noticed at one of our things, everything seems so negative. You can't do this, you can't do that, don't. Well, okay, what can I do?
Right.
I never answered that question. What can I do? So it's like giving them the cans instead of the can'ts. I just feel like so much is like, we're all kind of stressed and, and they're difficult and whatnot, but it's in developing coping mechanisms, helping them through, but being more compassionate and understanding and empathetic, I think goes a lot longer, a lot further than what some of I've seen. So that's all.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The difficulties with the language, not understanding the expectations or the culture. And something that we have started doing in our district is we match our students up with mentors. So, say if we have a student that is going to, Italy, for example, we will set them up with a mentor who is a rebound from previous years. And they can help them with their language, they can teach them the culture so that they are better prepared. And I think maybe we might start thinking of doing that with our inbound students.
Can I make it?
Sorry,
Oh.
Mary Lynn?
Yeah, we just started the yellow and red cards this last year. We had a student from Brazil that we were having some minor issues with. It was more disrespect than any of the big D's. But we had explained the yellow and red cards during orientation. And we also have a contract or like a performance improvement that they have to do if they get a yellow card. So on one of our trips, after repeatedly being told not to do something, he kept doing it anyway. So we sat him down and we talked to him and told him when we got home, we were going to have a meeting and we were going to fill out the performance report, what he needed to do to better his behavior. And he started teasing about it with the other kids. Oh, I got a yellow card and that kind of thing. And they all thought it was funny. Well, when we got home and we had the meeting with his counselor and his host parent and the inbound coordinator and myself, he saw the seriousness of it. And we filled out the contract with everybody about how he was going to improve. And it was a real example for the other kids because, of course, he told all the other kids what then happened when he got home. And he had to meet with us every other week to see how he was improving. And we were getting reports on his respect improving. And he stayed. He was one of the last ones to go home with the COVID and didn't want to leave. And so it was interesting what a difference that made, just sitting down and really talking through it with him, with his counselor and everybody else involved. It made it more serious.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. A contract is a very helpful tool, and I know, again, I refer to our district. If we hand out a yellow card, a contract comes along with that so that everybody's on the same page, everybody's clear. And I think that it really helps a student so that they can continue to have a successful exchange.
I wouldn't mind it, just a little bit of time. And I have to leave early, my apologies. But I did some work on what they call the May Informed Discipline process, which includes the whole concept of yellow, red, and early returns. And that information will be posted on the website for those that haven't attended the conference in Denver where it was first presented. And you can look forward to it on the main website in the near future if you're not familiar with it. It's a pretty good process. And I think, Pat, your district is quite familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of well, you had a sneak look at it before it was really finalized. So
Thank you, Daryl.
With yellow cards, and in fact, the whole behavioral kind of thing, what we have found that is effective is to keep the parents here. If you're talking about an outbound student, it's really good to keep the parents off the ceiling and a little bit out of the negotiation. Because what we explain at our orientation is that things need to happen there first, and usually things can be resolved there. But it's really difficult when the parents are firing off emails to practically everybody and spending all night on the phone with their poor child, because we do live in kind of a helicopter parent world right now. And so we need to be the ones that are doing the maintenance on the helicopter here to help them understand the process so that things can work through, especially for a yellow card, because a yellow card is not a red card. It's a notification that these are behaviors that we're concerned about. You have the ability to modify them. How can we make that happen? So, it's not like sitting in a probation officer's office. This is a problem solving kind of thing that's actually going to serve these kids really well through the future. And also for their parents to understand that other people can, trust the process. Eventually it'll get back here if it can't get resolved there, but trust the process.
Pat, one more thing that I think has happened in the past in our district is that we've actively promoted students who might have been considered marginal in the hopes that this exchange experience would enrich their lives and give them that break they needed to flourish. And it didn't always work out. And the same thing happens sometimes on applications that you receive from other countries. So sometimes there are warning signs that says this may be a problem. I'm not sure we should always embrace those problems, because the energy that's required to work with those kinds of issues and students can burn out your program. It can burn out YEOs, it can burn out host families. It can do lasting damage to your program. So I don't think, and I hesitate to say this because I know that we all really want students to have this opportunity, but there are occasions when you just go, this is
not good.
Very problematic for us. This could be really bad for us. And anyways, that's just a thought I have.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Daryl. And we did have a student about 3 years ago who, when we received her application and I read it, I had a lot of concerns. There was a lot of red flags. That student was sent on an exchange for a reason. Her parents wanted her to shape up.
See that way too often.
Yeah, and I learned then that student eventually, she did go home. She was not successful. I felt so badly for her because really it wasn't her fault. She should not have gone on an exchange. And I now know that it is our right to refuse a student.
Yeah.
If you receive an application that you are not comfortable with, that there are red flags, go back to your partner and express your concerns and look into that.
Yeah, because I see that a lot. And I guess one of the other concerns that I have along with this is that when you're sending outbound students out, you've also got to make sure that the district that you're sending the students to has the same kind of level of ability to do what we're talking about here, which is to work with the kids, to understand them and whatnot. And, we've found that a lot of times, at least half of the problem, if not more of it, when a student gets sent home is oftentimes the people in the district that are working with the student and trying to support the exchange. And we've had a couple of failed exchanges in our district, and we have a very limited number of students that go out. So that makes our failure rate pretty high, you know, as a percentage. And it's just frustrating because a lot of times it's just kind of almost a lack of, I mean, you know, in the United States, we're really big about sharing our information and trying to embrace the kids and kind of growing ourselves as a community around them. And in other countries, I don't always sense that. And I guess that's one of the things that I feel like Rotary maybe needs to do, is to have some training for people in other places about how we have this kind of discussions like we're having today, to learn how to manage situations and make it better for the kids, because, you know, they can, like, you know, Marie was saying, they can only do as well as we help them to be, because I mean, they come and they're teenagers, they're 16. You
Right.
have to teach them to learn how to negotiate the world and behave like an adult. And if they
Right.
don't have that support on the other end, it doesn't matter how well. And, you know, part of it was because of 911, but we go through so much effort to screen the families, screen the kids, you know, do all this stuff to make this safe environment. But then when we send them over to some other country, we don't always have the assurance or the ability to ensure that they're going to be met with that same level of attention once they get there.
And I think we also, a lot of problems happen with families who are hosting because that's a requirement in their country to send. And
Right.
obviously our district doesn't do that because we see so many problems that come up. And, you know, most of us have probably been parents, and there are those moments when you say things that aren't exactly the best and most appropriate thing to say. But when you're an exchange student and you hear your host family say, "You're only here because we had to,"
It
it's a
doesn't
deal
feel
breaker.
good. It doesn't feel good.
I have another perspective that I want to discuss. It's like two ends of a stick. On one end of the stick, for inbounds, for example, we have families who are wealthy, and I don't like the idea that if your family can afford it, that your kid can go out. So it's coming into the US who have maids at home, and they get here and the mother says, "I'm not picking up your clothes."
They don't know how to function.
And that's happened several times, that they just can't adapt to a more independent way of living. So that's on the elite end of the scale. On the other end of the scale are kids that we interviewed. We know they're coming from a less affluent family. And in fact, they don't have the money to go. And if they don't have the money to go, we wonder how they can get there and have the money to stay. So we talk about scholarships, and we come up with money, and the clubs pull money together, and people support these kids to go out. My personal approach is everybody has to have skin in the game. When you give a family all the money that's needed for their kid to go out, too often that kid is an early return because they're not prepared. They're there because we gave them the money to go. And all that investment in that kid goes away because we used our heart instead of our head to make sure that they were as committed to this program as we were in finding them the money. So it's a delicate balance. I don't like the fact that if the family can't afford it, that they don't get to go. But I don't think that we need to give the program away either, because my thing is always skin in the game. If they're not committed in some way, they're not committed to stay.
Natasha, do you have any sort of agreement? We have an agreement with our scholarship recipients that if they return because of X, Y, Z, then they are responsible. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, if they're not financially able, it can be kind of a moot point, but that is something that we've done that has been, we've had to exercise that before.
Yeah, I have personally, I think that scholarshiping should be on a loan basis. Maybe it's only half of the scholarship amount, but we're going to give you a no interest loan. You'll have 10 years to pay it back, knowing that many of them may never pay it back. but the idea that at least it is identified as a loan and not a gift.
Right.
I
And we,
didn't- Go ahead.
we've kind of gotten to a system where if we do offer a scholarship, it's only for the airfare. And we try to encourage the student to participate in some of our club activities, and we kind of help them find ways to earn the money themselves. So rather than just giving them the money, we'll set them up with an opportunity with, maybe one of our club members that has a job opportunity that they can help with, so that they're doing something to give back to the community in exchange for the opportunity to have that. And we've found that the kids that really are engaged will take that on. And the ones that are really just looking for the free handout, won't usually make it through that process. And it's not anything that we've done. We kind of do the scholarship stuff in our district. It's club by club. So we don't have any like real method to it. But I know that with my club in person in particular, we've done that a few times, and that has seemed to work.
To tack onto that fundraising idea, we had a ton of fun with that with our inbounds. One of our inbounds was from France, and she made Madeleines and sold them and made $300.
Yeah.
And then my exchange student from Belgium, we made cognac and sold that, and he made about $350. So it's kind of fun if they bring something from their district or their home and make it and share it. It was great, and it worked out wonderful for both students because they wanted to do things and they didn't have the funds. So we did that.
Those are some really good ideas, you guys. And I know that we give our eligible students a scholarship, but I kind of like the idea that if they come home, if they're sent home, that maybe they have to pay that money back. Anyways, we haven't heard from Gina, and I'm not sure if she has audio or not. I just typed her a message in chat room, but
She was the one who was at work, so she
you're
might
right.
not be able to participate.
yeah. So
You're
I'm
right.
thinking
My bad.
maybe not. Todd?
Hi, yes, thanks. I participate in the outbound interview process for our district, and I think that is one of the key control points to avoid early returns. And I have no idea what the right recipe is so we can do as good a job as possible anticipating who might be an early return concern. And specifically, I have been disappointed that I believe we're excluding good students would have an exceptional exchange here because they don't fit our standard expectations. Like we had one student who was slightly not Down syndrome, help me out.
Autistic?
Autistic, thank you. Yes, he was slightly autistic. Asperger's is what they used to call it, but autistic, I think, is the term now. And when we asked the standard questions, he just didn't get what we were asking. But if you would take the time to spend with him, he, I thought he was a great candidate. We passed him over one year. We did send him out the next year. He was not an early return, and I so wanted to talk to him about his exchange experience, but he moved to another state before I had the chance. So I think the whole, how do we interview in a fair way to avoid early returns is something I would certainly like more guidance on.
May I add to that? We had a student who went to Brazil who had Asperger's, and I really fought for him to be able to go. In order to do that, we had to go to that district and say, we've got a candidate who had a brother who went out earlier. She's a great host mother and a great mom, and we'd like him to go. Can you take him? And it turned out that the club had psychologists that were dealing with Asperger's. They had doctors that had dealt with it. So it was the best exchange. He was the favorite student. He learned the language better than everybody else in Portugal and in Brazil. He was the favorite at the clubs. When he came into the meeting, the whole club showed up. So you're right. We need to give kids that aren't on that standard norm path, we need to give them a chance, because he's an inspiration. He's learning another language now. And
Yeah.
he's such a good rebound to help our inbounds and to help our next club of outbounds.
Our district hosted a girl from Nepal a couple of years ago who was blind. And I mean, it took a lot of work, and she stayed with a host family that was set up to deal with that. So she only had one family for the whole year, but you know, she went into school and they worked with her and whatever. And I mean, it was just amazing to see her transition.
Yeah, and Todd, I think probably each district has a little bit separate process for interviewing. In our district, we interview in teams of 3, and we interview the student and then the parent. And then one of the questions we ask is, you know, once we get back together, whose idea does this seem to be the most?
Yes.
Is this a kid who wants to go, or is this a parent who can't really quite figure out how to get their kid in military school, and this is more socially acceptable to say my kid's on exchange?
Right. And I have a question. When you are most districts, does your club do an interview and then you have a district level interview as well? I mean, that's how we've been doing it traditionally, so that there's 2 sets of interviews, and I think that really helps also.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and we have, you know, obviously probably everybody else does too, but we have more applicants than we have slots. And so that's why, you know, I think it is really important to look at some diversity in who you're sending out. And sometimes that means you might bypass a kid who looks like he or she would do better for the benefit of what can happen on exchange for some of the other students. So it is a complicated process, and like everything else, there's no guarantees that there's a perfect way to do it. But we do the best we can.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you have more applicants than you have slots.
We don't have that problem.
Situation in our district, unfortunately.
Same here.
It's like a tough job interview, frankly. I mean, it's like when you have 40 kids that you're interviewing for 28 slots, and they all would be good exchange students. It's like being a resource manager at work. It's not easy.
Yeah. And, you know, don't forget that when you have a student who you're not really sure about, maybe they didn't come across really well in your interviews, you can always go to the school and go to the teacher, go to the guidance counselors and talk to them, because they will know that student. So if you have a student that you think might be a bit weak, but you're not sure, they're there to help you out. Mm-hmm. I see we still have some time, so.
And just have you guys seen the new applications that have come out?
Yes.
The medical is pretty complicated, and we're concerned that doctors may not be all that excited about filling out a 3-page document that has to be signed by the physician. But also what we're talking about in terms of going back to people to get more information about kids, there are some new privacy rules that we need to be really aware of, so that we're not violating anybody's
HIPAA.
You know, it's not HIPAA, but it's
whatever. Yeah,
to.
simple. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have anything to share?
Welcome. Hi, everybody. Maria is posting some things in chat that I didn't know. Are you taking notes, Marie?
Yes, she's doing a great job. There's lots of really good notes in there.
We get to see them as she's doing it too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And then they're all saved. So, you're doing a great job, Marie. Thank you. Anything else?
I'm not known for being very short with things. Like, I'm the secretary for our district, and our district committee meetings are 18 pages long.
Oh,
so you don't take minutes, you take hours.
I want to capture everything, so.
Good for you.
You are the right person for the job.
So we have
when we've had, okay, this is just a little bit follow up to red cards, but when you've had kids who come home on red cards, what kind of a reaction do you get from them? And I also like the idea of them repaying part of their scholarship, but sometimes those concerns that raised the red card make it difficult to reclaim the money. But we've had a couple of students who came home, one for her second violation of the drinking thing in a country where she actually could have if she had done it correctly. She and her mom actually had a really, really nice response to what happened in terms of the life lessons learned by having to come home early. It wasn't bitterness, it wasn't anger. It's like, I screwed up there, but I don't have to screw up here. And so again, sometimes you learn the best by things that don't go the way you want them to in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've had, well, last year, no, the year before, we had 2 students come home early. It's a devastating experience for them. And so we try to be as supportive as we can with that student. We also have a mental health professional on our district committee who is in touch with students inbounds and outbounds. So if a student is having problems or a student comes home early, she's there for them. And we still like to include that student in the rebound camps so that they can share their experiences as well.
I was gonna say that I've only been doing this for 2 years, but in the 2 years, the kids that have come home that were outbounds came home because they couldn't handle whatever situation was presented to them. It wasn't a yellow card, it wasn't a red card. And it's kind of, again, needing to coach the students through the process. We got one to stay, but I don't blame her for wanting to come home. I think we need to be, with certain countries, we need to be sure that we consider, like France, for example, and Belgium. My daughter went to Belgium. They don't like Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know French, you're screwed.
Yep.
They hate you from day one. The one girl had rocks thrown at her at school. She was like locked in bathrooms, and who wouldn't want to come home, right? She wasn't prepared for the hostility towards Americans. And I think my daughter lasted too, but came home with some psychological issues because of, I'm a nice person, nobody liked me, why didn't they like me? So I think just really being honest with them, especially those countries, because they're there, not to scare them, but just to prepare them that this is normal, sadly. But anyway, that's all.
Yes, that's unfortunate. It does happen. And that's where we find setting students up with mentors who have been in the same countries works really well. It just helps to prepare them a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have 3 more minutes.
Okay, we had a young woman who went to Bolivia, and her goal was to change the misogynistic society. So she took that on as a challenge. I don't think she was quite successful. The other thing that I wanted to mention, just as an idea that is really kind of not anything to do with this necessarily, but having to do with preparation and then kids coming back for their rebound meeting. We have kids research food in the country they're going to, and our last meeting before they go out, they bring something from that country to share with the others. But then also when we have a rebound meeting, we have them do it so that they're actually bringing authentic foods from the country that they went to. Yes, we save some money on food, but it's a great experience for them to share what they really learned about their country.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Sounds
Very
like
good
fun.
idea.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I like food or anything, so it's kind of self-serving.
I was just going to say something about when we're talking about the reaction to the returns. We try to do sort of an exit interview, if you will, type of a thing. If they're early returns, sometimes that's well received. Sometimes they avoid it completely and run off into oblivion, and it's hard to re-engage them. And I think, Pat, you mentioned that if there are early returns, depending on the situation, we do still try to include them in meetings because it is really good for them to share that experience, because we have found, I think, like you said, Dan, once they come back, they're like, oh yeah, well, I did kind of mess that up, and here's what I should have done, or here's what happened. in retrospect, I could have made a better decision. I think it just kind of is situational for us.
Yeah, we have to remember to be supportive. We all make mistakes. Hopefully we all learn from them.
Yeah, and I'll say that we had this last year, well, I'm sorry, 2 years ago, we had 4 students from my local club that went out, which was crazy, a lot of, a massive amount compared to what we usually have one. One of the students came back within a month, just realized that it just wasn't for her. So that was very unfortunate. But when I was discussing this, you know, why are we including her? At the time, I had a totally different perspective on it. You know, why are we including her? And she was a massive failure in this and should have known up front. And she was the one that we were all sure was going to make it. And it doesn't matter really how long they were there. They still had an experience, right? They still had lived through this, whether it was a day, 2 days, 11 months. They have something to share, and they lived through that and had an experience. So kind of changed
exactly right. Okay, everybody. I think our time is up. I want to thank you all for sharing. We've heard some great comments, and you've shared some great experiences. And I just want to say thank you. I've learned a lot.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
So enjoy your next session.